Now, this is going to basically be a chat about anything. Okay, anything's welcome. We want to get to know you. We want to get to know about you, and obviously, everything is kind of in the context of spirituality. But anything goes as long as we take responsibility for what it is that we
Okay,
say,
and
and good morning to everybody watching.
good morning.
Obviously, this is being pre-recorded, and we'll start. This is hopefully going to be the start of a video podcast on YouTube, or maybe even an actual podcast. We'll see where it goes, but this is the very beginning. Um, so we have with us Jason Reagan. He is a longtime friend, childhood friend, and now we're in our 40s or approaching 40, and
Yeah, boy, oh boy.
and definitely life has evolved
Oh yeah.
up to this point. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Well, as you said, we're pretty much childhood friends. I mean, we grew up together. Um, I've pretty much been legally blind in my right eye since birth. I've dealt with that, and then at the age of 25, for no rhyme or reason, I got disabled. I have what's called cerebral ataxia. It affects my balance, my speech, my coordination. And I mean, I could just sit around and be like, well, poor me, but it is what it is. I can't change it. So, I live with it. I make the best of everything. So,
Yeah. Did you ever? I mean, I can imagine with an onset of something like that, that is, disabling in, vision, speech,
sure.
or coordination, balance. It messes with your function to move, and with it just kind of, I mean, because you didn't. It wasn't like an onset, like a slow, gradual thing. It was like a bam, almost, right?
Well, when I noticed it, it was, but I guess it was gradual. But at the time, I was working 24/7 as a locksmith. So I
Right.
just contributed to being tired.
Sure.
But come to find out that I couldn't do a job. And at that point, I went to the hospital at Tampa General.
Mm.
And that's when they found it, and they discovered there was more to it than just being tired. So, I mean, I, I guess it was gradual, but because of my situation at the time, I didn't really notice it or pay any mind to it.
Sure.
Um, so
Well, then you had to gradual, you had a gradual assessment of what was going on, and then and you're like, okay, you weren't attributing it to any type of disorder or disease. You were attributing it to work pace, being exhausted, maybe stress, whatever.
right,
Because this was before you had children, right? Oh,
yeah.
no, not well. I mean,
I
your
had
children were very
Chloe
young,
before I got, but the other two came after my
right?
diagnosis. So,
So, how did it impact your life with the diagnosis? Like, bam, here you go. Here's the diagnosis plopped in your lap.
well, at the time, I did go through a depression for about a year, I would say, where I did nothing but engross myself in video games and pretty much live life through that as opposed to living in the real world. And
Right.
I decided enough's enough, and I gotta live my life. It is what it is. It's not
Sure.
gonna change. And I was pretty much over just, I quit playing video games, and, I figured, hey, might as well get on living.
Yeah, for sure. And is this a situation that's going to continue advancing, or is this it's as where it's going to be for the rest of life, or
Well, what it is actually it is degenerate, which my cerebellum is actually shrinking, and everyone does that. And time, that's why you see a lot of older people using canes and walkers and everything else. Mine
sure,
just started doing it sooner.
right,
So yes, as I get older, to continue shrinking, everyone, like I said, everyone just does. It
right.
just mine's more advanced. It
Now,
started sooner.
educate us on cerebellum. What is that?
Yeah, that's the smaller part of the brain, and that is what controls your motion, your
Mm,
coordination, your speed, your pretty much your fine motor skills.
sure.
And like I said, with mine shrinking, it has less of a capacity to do stuff.
Okay. So you went through a period of depression and learning how to be disabled, right? And you're learning to accept it. I get, well, I mean, it
Right.
sounds kind of what you went through was a little bit of a grieving period. Would you think
Right.
that's accurate?
Yeah. No, that's very accurate. And and when I first got told, it was like, I thought pretty much the world ended. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, I mean, it continues on whether you do or not. So,
yeah,
I and like you said, I do have three kids now. So, I can't just sit around and do nothing. I live for them, pretty much.
yeah, absolutely. And so in going through the grieving process, and it's some people may not relate having a situation where a disease, a dysfunction, a disorder, dropped in your lap as something that you have to go through a grieving process for. But quite honestly, it's so common to go through a grieving process for even the tiniest things, like you can't find your car keys in the morning and you're trying to rush off to work. It's almost like a miniature grieving process where
Yeah.
eventually you have to get to the point of acceptance, and then you move into a a miniature adventure to seek out, right, what you're looking for. Did the onset of this spark anything in you as far as the metaphysical or the spiritual, uh, or questions?
I mean, the only question at that time was why me? And,
Right.
why did this happen to me? And, what have I done in order to uh, deserve that, I guess, in a way,
Sure.
And, I mean, you never really get an answer because, it's like, well, why me, And so
Yeah.
at that time, I just went about and was, doing my own thing and, living. And for the kids, was going to the gym and I couldn't, like, at one point I was doing it, I think I was on the leg press and I'm like, what, I don't feel like doing this. And then I thought to myself, I'm doing it for the kids. So,
Right.
that's what got me through that workout. And,
Sure.
that's what. So, I mean, I have. I feel like I'm getting more into the spiritual aspect of things now, but I mean, at that time I didn't. It was more of a not a hatred to spirituality and what why, but it was more of a numbness, I guess you want to say.
Sure. And so when we come across questions like that, like why me, why is this happening to me, what did I do to deserve this, those types of things, very natural questions.
Yeah.
But did you ever come up with an actual answer to those questions?
I mean, the only answer I could come up with is because one, I'm able to accept it and move, and it might be hard for other people, but yeah, I mean, I've always stayed positive, I guess. I mean, yes, I did go through that negativity part. I mean, who wouldn't?
Right.
But I've always been a positive person. So, and anyone that knows me will tell you I'm one of the most positive people,
Sure.
and patient person. I mean, with three kids, you kind of have to be patient, but on top of
Yeah.
everything else,
Yeah, and I think it's a really important to address that one question,
right,
why me? But also the deserving part, right?
right,
In my in my from my viewpoint, we all have things that happen in our life. We all have hardships in it. And honestly, I don't think it matters to the individual, but I don't think it matters hardship to hardship. We could lose a loved one. We could have a diagnosis, that changes our life. We could, we could have a self-inflicted um, tribulation, right? Like, some people get into drugs and alcohol, like my
right,
story, right? And you accidentally fall into it, and then you're stuck in the middle of it, and you're going, why? Why me? Why did I do this to myself, or whatever?
right,
What did I do to deserve this? That kind of stuff. And I think that it's helpful to realize, again, in my perspective, that there is no we deserve what
right.
happens to us in life experiences. We deserve nothing less than an experience, a love, right? We are divine beings, right? Having a human experience. And I think it's very helpful to understand that we are when we start evaluating, who am I, what am I doing here, where did I come from, what's my purpose on this in this life, or why am I on this
Right,
planet, like what are we all doing here, um that we start to look at a life experience and go, well, that bad thing happened to me, I deserve it. Sometimes it's easy to see, like, I did that, right? So
right.
obviously that outcome is the consequence of my own actions. But when it's not the consequence of one's own actions, or a trauma, or etc., and we do pull up that question, like, why me? What did I do to deserve this? That we can really concentrate on this, very specifically. We are here to have a human experience, and that human experience is so diverse in what we can choose to deal with, right? What we can choose to experience. And even if our conscious mind doesn't can't wrap can't we can't wrap our mind around the concept of, why would I choose this, or why would I choose to experience this? It is to have an experience of love. And what is that? It's a connection point, right? We If we all lived perfect lives, like everything was just fine and dandy all the fucking time, right? And then it would just be commonplace to just always be in that, yeah, everything's great, yeah, everything's great, right?
Yeah, and nine times out of ten, if you ask somebody that is hearing, then they're always like, "Yeah, it's good." Yeah, but it's not always good. They just that's all they think you want to hear, so that's all
Yeah,
they say.
It would become very mundane. Life
Yeah,
would be extremely bland if everything went right all the time.
all
And
the
some
time.
people right now, they're listening to this and they're going, I want that blandness. I want it to be right all the time. I'm tired of the troublesome situations. And here's hope, okay? You're going to go through periods of time where everything is just fine and dandy and everything's good. And then you're going to go through periods of time of trials and tribulations, and that's going to pass too, and you'll be back to the good, and then you'll be back to the trials and tribulations, and so on and so forth. But the one point that I'm trying to make is that we have these life experiences to come into back into love with ourselves,
Yeah,
right? We go, uh, how could I love myself with a disorder like alcoholism that runs in my family, right? And I fell right into the trap and I had to pull myself out of that hell, right? How can I, and I've said it, I hate myself. I have said that, I've thought it, I've almost acted on it. As a matter of fact, there were actions that were taken towards that mindset. I hate myself. Well, why would I want to go through an experience like that? Is we do that,
yeah,
in essence, to come to this point of accepting and loving ourselves in the face of that trial or tribulation, right?
right.
It's the ending of the grieving process, if you will, with, hey, look, I accept who I am. I know that things can be better, right? I know that my actions from this point forward, once you come to an acceptance point with, a story like yours where you have this diagnosis, you have this, debilitating disorder that affects you, you come to acceptance with it, you say, I'm not going to let my life be defined by this thing, right? I had to do the same thing.
Yeah,
Alcohol was destroying my life. I had to come to a point where I go, I will no longer be defined by this, and I know it can be better. So it's almost an acceptance point of, yes, I have a problem. For me, it was a self-inflicted problem, but you accept it. You say, and not an acceptance in a way of like, I'm just a drunk and that's the way it is. No, it is, I have this problem, but I'm gonna do better, because I don't think that you can really see a turning point in life without the acceptance of that thing and going, you know what, I love myself anyway, and I'm gonna get myself out of this hell that I've created for myself.
right. Like I've always said, it may be who I am, but it won't define me, you know. I
Right.
mean, I choose to do what I want to do, you know, and I may not be able to run a mile, but I mean, you better believe I'm gonna be right there with you
But you'll
somehow,
still
some
travel the
way.
mile.
Right? Yeah, there you go. I'll
You'll
still
do it.
travel
You may
it.
not be
I
able to
just
run
can't.
it, but you'll do it how
Right,
you can. The fact
right,
is I'm getting there, buddy.
exactly.
So, you know, I have to say that, in things that in the diverse and just multitudinous things that we humans design our lives around, to
Yeah,
have a human experience and stuff like that, is it's diverse and it has levels of extreme.
yeah, definitely.
And I can say from my perspective that I wouldn't wish alcoholism on anyone, right? And you probably wouldn't
Yeah,
wish
I
what
I
you're going
just like,
through on.
yeah, I wouldn't wish what I have on anyone. And I get it all the time. People like, oh, when I'm like riding on the scooter or something, oh, I wish I could sit down. I'm like, yeah, well, I wish I could stand up. I mean, come
Yeah,
on,
and we want to see things from someone else's perspective, but we don't really. Be careful what you wish for. That's what
yeah,
I'll say.
that's
And
exactly it.
and but what I will say is that you did tell me a story the other day that, well, the the theme was inspiration, and it inspired me as well. That you have definitely uh, had a turning point for towards the higher frequencies of life when someone comes up to you, uh, knowing your story or being able to see you, right? So
Yeah.
you said you were in the gym,
Yeah.
someone saw you, and they came up and they said, "You inspire me."
Yeah, and that's all they wanted to say. They
Yeah,
just came up and said, "Hey, you inspire me," you know, being here, and then left. Actually, the other day when I went to sign in, one of the workers there said, they enjoy seeing me in there. They look forward to seeing me in there. It's like,
awesome.
I mean, you don't think about how you're influencing others, but if you live your life to the fullest and be happy with who you are, you influence others just being yourself. You don't even have to say a single word to them. They can see you and know that you are a shining light.
Absolutely. And I think it comes to that point when dealing with life tribulations. Why me? Or why did I deserve this? Or why is this happening to me? Or whatever people might ask themselves when going through a trial or tribulation in life. I think that's why,
Yeah.
right? And it comes back to the point of, what do you deserve? You deserve that. I mean, that is the disability, or the trial or tribulation, like addiction or loss of a loved one, or anything, right? There's so many traumatic things that can happen, and some of them are absolutely awful. And when I hear about these things happening, my heart literally rips in half, right? Literally rips in half. Then I have to repair it. But there are so many different things that we go through in life that no one would say, I chose that for my life path, right? Not the point. That's not the point. You went through it. It was an experience. And on a healing journey, whether you're specifically doing it for spiritual purposes, because you heard somebody say something cool about spirituality and the healing that can take place on a certain path and all that stuff, or you just did it organically, uh, through the natural grieving process of your situation, but you come to the other side of that grieving process and you accept and you heal, right? And there you have an experience, right? That's what you have. And
Yeah.
whether in life we go and we have a good experience, we have a diamond. And when we have a bad experience, we have a lump of coal, right? Once the emotions run off and we go through the process and the emotions have died off, now when we have a good experience, it's usually uh, it's usually finite, right? We go, yep, I'm happy, and then I'm not, right? Fine,
Right.
whatever. But you take that happy experience, and that diamond, and you put it in your pocket. With a bad experience, we have that lump of coal. And it's a little bit harder to understand that in the middle of that lump of coal is also a diamond, because the emotions surrounding that diamond they're negative, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a lot harder to get over negative emotions. And sometimes
Yeah.
the negative emotions seem infinite, right? They last a lot longer than the good emotions. Like when it's good, all right, it's great, whatever, and then it passes, and then you move on. But the bad shit in life always tends to hang around for a really long time.
Oh yeah.
But if we can go through the healing process, whether organically or purposefully, we very slowly start to realize that the coal around that diamond starts to fall off. And then when we have, in fact, gone through our healing process, what's left in our hand from that bad experience is a diamond, right?
Right.
Now, when we go through life, we can tell others about our experience. That is like trying to duplicate the diamond in your pocket. And as a matter of fact, you can do this. This is how you inspire people. When that guy came up to you and said, "You inspire me," in a I don't know, metaphorical sense,
Yeah.
you duplicated that diamond in your pocket and you handed it to him, right? And it
Right.
can happen with a good experience, it can happen with a bad experience. That diamond stays in your pocket, but at your will, you can duplicate it and hand it to other people and say, here is what my experience was. Maybe you're going through something similar, maybe you're going through something different, but
Yeah.
perhaps this diamond can help you out. And I believe that it can. And that's why I'm doing this.
Right. I mean, you may not realize it at the time, but like you said, you pass it on, and they feel good about themselves because of you. It's like you basically rub off on them without even knowing why. And just because he might have been the only one to actually come up to me and say something doesn't mean there is not other, that for the
Absolutely.
same thing, he was just bold enough to come up and say something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's really just it's just a vibration, right? That's being
Yeah.
passed off. But when we're telling a story and someone can relate to that story and they can relate to you. Now, whether the symptom of life is the same or not, they can go, man, that guy went through it or that girl went through it, but look at them now.
Yeah.
Look at them now. And I'm going through it right now. And they can see in you what's possible. They can see it. And a lot of times they can feel it, whether or not they realize it or not.
Right.
But that is the gift. That is the diamond. They get to see what's possible. And while at the moment life can be shit and they're not really believing in themselves and they're possibly stuck in a victim mentality, but in the back of their mind they're going, I know life can be better. I know life can be better than this, right? When they meet you or hear you speak or just see you in the gym, they go,
Yeah.
there's my proof. There's my proof. I can see it. That means it's possible.
And at the time when I asked myself, I might not have realized it, but now later in life, because that was, 15 years ago, and now, I mean, it might not get your answer, or you might not get your reasoning or your reward, or however you want to say it right away. But 15 years later, someone came up to me and told me, hey, you're inspiring. Well, if I would have continued staying in that depression state like I was, and being down, that would have never occurred. So everything happens for a reason, I mean,
It does. It
and
does.
you sometimes have to put forth the effort to make it happen, just because, yeah, if you don't do anything, then nothing may occur or come from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it boils down again to that love aspect. And we might not always identify a life experience. Why are we going through a life experience? To learn about love, to learn about love for ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
can once we can cultivate the understanding of that love and then wield the power of that love for ourselves, then we have it, right? We have those diamonds in our pocket. Those diamonds in our pocket are literal manifestations of our understanding of love for ourselves. Then we have it. Now we can give it to others. You can't give to others what you don't have, right? But once we've turned those experiences into love for ourselves, then we can do it for others. A woman who went through a hardship in a terrible relationship where there's abuse and different things like that. It's an absolute awful situation, right? Being an alcoholic or drug addicted is an absolutely awful situation, and we will put ourselves into terrible situations that at the moment seems like we have absolutely no control over it, even though it was our conscious decision to make those choices, right? But once we get through the point where that trial or tribulation ends, we go through a healing process, and then all we have is that diamond in our pocket. Then we can share that love with others. Hey, look, this is what happened. This is what I came to realize. This is how I evolved. Now I have love, and I want to pass it on to you.
But at the same time, like there's so many people that carry on things into another relationship or another situation. And the thing is, that person doesn't deserve what you've went through in the past, just because you went through it don't mean it's going to be the same, so I mean, no matter what it is, whether it's a situation or whatnot, but either way, you have to move on, you can't hold on to the past, because if I, like I said, if I would have held on to what happened to me and every situation in the future said, hey, well, this could happen, it doesn't mean it's going to, but it could, but okay, move on, I mean,
Yeah,
don't approach everything like it's going to happen to you.
absolutely. And you know, I did not feel in control of myself when I was
Yeah,
abusing alcohol, right? I wouldn't say I wasn't ready to take responsibility for it. So, in essence, in my mind, this is happening to me. I'm a victim, right?
yeah,
And it wasn't until I decided very specifically not to define myself any longer by that thing, right? And while it can still maintain a challenge or a temptation in life, you no longer identify with that. And I came about it through a difficult healing process, but and spirituality helped me overcome that. But
yeah,
it wasn't like a light switch. You know what I mean?
right.
It took a process of you know what, shit, I failed again, right? Oops. Okay, you know what, nope, shake it off and keep walking
And
forward,
keep
right?
on,
Keep
yeah.
walking forward. Keep walking forward, and eventually you don't necessarily outrun it, but you just lift the vibration of yourself to where it no longer defines you. It no longer defines you, and it no longer wreaks havoc on your life. Just to the point where you got where of self acceptance and self love, where you could, you know, you could get moving and get going and enjoy life the best of your ability. And maybe it's the kids that motivate you. I know for me, it certainly was my children and
Right.
partner that motivated me to be better, right? I like having friends. I like having friends that I can talk to and talk to in a positive way. Not every time I call a friend, life is terrible and I'm fucking down on myself and all this stuff, right?
Right.
I like having friends that I can share good life experiences with. And so it was those motivations that were able you know, to self correct the path.
Uh, that's like when we took our trip up to Tennessee, I know I relied on y'all a lot and being with friends helped out a lot because I mean we got through tribulation trials and we had fun while we were there. At least I did. So
Yeah,
hey,
we did. Yeah, we had a blast. And I think that's, man, that's just absolutely amazing, right? But if you stayed in a spot of
Yeah.
depression, if you stayed in a spot of victimhood, and has stayed in the spot of poor, pitiful me, this happened to me, I must be a piece of shit because I deserve this mentality, probably no one would want to be around you.
Right.
And so, in
Probably
essence,
not
those
even
beautiful
kids.
experiences, in essence, those beautiful experiences would have never come to pass because nobody would have wanted to be around that negative vibration. Everybody would have been like, yeah, I feel bad for you, but I'm not bringing that into my space. Right.
Right.
But because you were able to cultivate an attitude of positivity, obviously everybody wants that in their space for sure.
Right.
So what now? We only got a few minutes left before this thing shuts off on us.
Yeah.
But what's next for you? Where do you see things going?
To be honest with you, I mean, I want to get a place for me and the kids, but now spiritually, like I would definitely, I want to grow, and that's why I'm here because I'm coming to you because I mean, I feel like you would help to grow, more so than what I've been. I Now, I mean, I was raised in Pentecostal, so I do know that I'm currently following the Nordic gods, which, the spirituality of that, and I feel like what we're going through is a lot more, not more, but, uh, along the lines of what I want to do, so
Absolutely.
that's why I'm here. I want to grow. I don't want to stay stagnant, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to growing with you, brother. I mean, for sure. We all, I mean, it doesn't end. Like we still draw breath. So
Yeah,
life is and right now life is good. And I'm super grateful. And I think there's a lot to be learned from Norse mythology. I believe in all of those beings, entities, gods, goddesses. Um, and I believe that we can learn a lot and it can inspire our life so that way we can love ourselves deeper and help others as well. So keep going in that. And I'm certainly looking forward to having another call with you in the near future so we can
definitely.
keep exploring these concepts. But obviously, in the meantime, we're just going to keep doing the work.
All right, sounds good.
All right, brother. Love you, man. Thanks for joining me. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to Jason's story, man. Absolutely inspiring, dude. Keep doing the good work.